I never imagined that confronting my deepest fears could lead to an unbelievable transformation. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The air felt thick, heavy with unspoken words. I stood there, heart racing, palms clammy, anxiety spiraling. It was as if the universe held its breath, waiting to see what I would do next. My sister Lily watched from the corner of the room, her eyes wide with disbelief. She had always been my rock, but this was different. I could tell she felt the energy crackling in the air. It felt ominous, like lightning just before the storm. "You have to face it," she whispered, her voice trembling. It was more of a plea than an order. I'd buried my fears for so long. Growing up, my father's shadow loomed large, a daunting presence I could never escape. The weight of his expectations crushed me, turning me into someone I wasn't. The more I tried to please him, the more lost I became. The hollow ache in my chest felt insurmountable. Memories flooded back, each one a reminder of what I failed to achieve. But then there was Eric. Sweet, warm-hearted Eric. My best friend, my confidant, always believing in me even when I didn't believe in myself. He once said, "Fear is just a story we tell ourselves." I wanted to believe him. His voice echoed in my mind now, a beacon pushing me forward. Yet the fear slithered back in. I could feel my heart pounding, drowning out his voice. The moment struck like a gunshot. I took a deep breath, trembling, stepping toward that dark shadow of fear. My mind raced. Would I break? Would I finally find freedom? The room was silent, every eye on me, the air electric with anticipation. I closed my eyes, visualizing a world where I was not shackled by doubt. But something unsettled rose within me, urging me to back down. The taste of fear was metallic, sharp, and I choked on it. Everything spiraled. Suddenly, I was sinking, like quicksand pulling me under. Murmurs filled the air. Were they whispers of encouragement or dread? I opened my eyes, searching for reassurance. All I saw was the intensity of their gazes, compelling and terrifying. I could hear my own heartbeat racing, pounding, drowning out all sound. But then, just as I was ready to make a choice, a loud crash rang out from the back, echoing like thunder in my ears. My heart stopped. Everyone turned, breath held in collective shock. My sister gasped, and the room shifted like a scene in a movie, all eyes darting, searching for the source of that chaos. Was it a sign? A warning? We all held our breath, the air thick with questions. How would I move forward now? Would I take the plunge, face my fears, or would I let this moment slip away into the shadows that had haunted me for so long? What lay ahead was a mystery, and all I could do was stand at the edge. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the sound reverberated through the room, I felt every set of eyes shift from me to the source of the commotion. Adrenaline coursed through my veins, and I was torn between the impulse to flee and the urge to confront the darkness hovering in my mind. It was as if I could feel the collective heartbeats of those watching, syncing with my own, a frantic symphony of tension and uncertainty. Lily stepped forward, her expression contorted with concern, but there was something in her eyes, a flicker of hope. "Are you okay?" she asked, keeping her voice steady despite the chaos. I nodded, even though my insides felt like jelly. Staring into the shadows, a tall figure emerged amidst the chaos. It was Mom, breathless but composed, holding a handful of scattered papers. "I'm so sorry. I was looking for something and knocked over a stack." Her words trailed off as she took in the atmosphere, horror dawning on her face. What's happening here? It was as if I could see the tension in the air morphing, moldable clay ready to be shaped, yet the shape it was taking felt like despair pressing against my chest. A part of me felt grateful for the interruption, a temporary reprieve from the decision I had to make, while another part longed to grasp the moment, to plunge into the deep waters of my uncertainty. Just a family discussion, my sister replied, shooting me a quick glance. I could see the underlying urgency in her gaze. She knew the gravity of the situation, the weight of my fears still pressing down like a leaden blanket. The words echoed in my mind, confronting my fears. How could I do that now, with my heart racing and the shadow of doubt creeping back into view? Mom's eyes locked onto mine, and in that moment, something shifted. I was no longer just a daughter defined by my father's expectations. I was a person wrestling with her own demons. I could see the worry etched in her features, a reflection of my own internal struggles. "Honey, is everything all right?" she asked, her voice softening doubt. I wanted to scream, to unleash the torrent of emotions trapped inside me. Instead, my voice felt brittle, like glass about to shatter. "I don't know." The honesty hung between us, heavy with unfulfilled potential. Just then, Eric broke the thick silence. He stepped forward, his kind, familiar smile offering a balm to my frayed nerves. "We're all here for you," he said, his tone laced with gentle encouragement. "Whatever you want to do, we'll support you. No one is judging. Just take your time." Hope crept in, threading its way through the cracks in my heart. I turned to look at Lily, who nodded imperceptibly, her silent encouragement volumes louder than words. I had to face my fears, but how could I do it surrounded by those who knew every vulnerability, every scar? The moment felt suspended, gravity lost in an ethereal space of possibility. I could choose to step forward or back away, but with each second that passed, the weight of indecision pressed onto my chest harder. And then my focus shifted back to Mom, her concern palpable, the chaos behind her forgotten. "I've spent so long trying to meet expectations, yours and my father's," I admitted, my voice trembling. "But every time I try to be someone I'm not, it eats me alive." Tears threatened to spill as I spoke, and I surprised myself by not backing down. Was this the confrontation I was afraid of? Or was it the first step toward liberation? I had spent years masking my pain, pretending I didn't feel lost in my own life. Would revealing that pain make me vulnerable or free me from its grasp? But then, as I wrestled with my thoughts, the floor creaked ominously, a low rumble suggesting that someone hadn't just barged in. They had stumbled upon the crux of my turmoil. And then, from the narrow hallway, a door swung open forcefully, revealing a figure I never expected to see. "Dad." The air froze. Everyone turned to look at him, and I could hear the collective intake of breath. My heart clenched, thoughts spiraling out of control. Did he come to support me? To tear me down? The uncertainty was almost unbearable, every second stretching impossibly like an endless loop of dread. "Why aren't you answering my calls?" he demanded, his voice laced with frustration but tinged with something akin to concern. His gaze fell onto me, and I felt all the weight of my childhood expectations crashing down at once. This was the storm I had feared, the confrontation I had prepared for yet now dreaded more than ever. "Because I'm tired of living under the weight of your dreams," I said, finally summoning the strength I'd so desperately needed. The words spilled out before I could think twice, and I was left dangling on the precipice of something monumental. Would this be my thunderstorm, or would it break the clouds open to reveal something brighter? And just as his expression shifted from shock to something unreadable, I realized I was standing at the edge once more, but this time I was not alone. In that charged moment, I felt both the warmth of support and the chill of uncertainty, uncertain what my next step would bring. The room was thick with tension, a fragile web that threatened to snap under the weight of unspoken words. Dad's presence was a sudden storm, the kind that leaves you standing in the eye, unsure whether to brace for the downpour or embrace the strange calm. I could feel the energy shift as he stared back at me, eyes narrowing, and I clenched my fists, a surge of defiance running through me. "Living under my dreams?" he echoed incredulously, taking a step forward, hands gesturing wildly as if he could dismiss my feelings with mere motions. "Everything I did was for you, to give you a future." There it was, the familiar rhetoric that had simmered in our home for years, an echo of expectations that felt as suffocating as a weight pressed against my chest. But among the swirling resentment and rage, there was a flicker of clarity. It wasn't your future, Dad. It was yours, I replied, my voice trembling but resolute. The air thickened, and for a moment, no one spoke. I could sense the unease creeping into the room, the disbelief from the family who had both built me up and, inadvertently, confined me. In that silence, I could feel the warm glow of Eric's hand brushing against mine, a steady anchor amidst the tempest. His presence reminded me that I was not wholly defined by this confrontation, by this man who had chiseled my identity into what he deemed acceptable. You think you know what's best for me, don't you? I continued, loosening the bitter truths strangling my insides. But you don't. You never really have. Mom shifted uncomfortably, her eyes darting from one face to another, but even she could not hide the empathy that flickered in her gaze. I saw her lips twitch, but she remained silent, caught between her fierce loyalty to my father and the undeniable gravity of our current reality. Dad's expression darkened, confusion etched across his features. I sacrificed everything for you. You're throwing it all away. Each word was like a sledgehammer, striking a balance between anger and desperation. But I wasn't throwing anything away. I was merely reclaiming what was always mine. No, Dad. I'm not throwing anything away. I'm finally choosing to find out what I want outside of your shadow. As bitter tears blurred my vision, I noticed Lily's hands slipping into mine, her grip firm and reassuring. It's okay to be scared, she said quietly, her eyes unwavering. But you have to express how you feel. You can't keep pretending. And just like that, as if she had struck a chord buried deep within me, my heart swelled with an unexpected rush of courage. The tension unraveled slightly, allowing space for something I hadn't anticipated: hope. In this moment, surrounded by those who cared for me, I realized that vulnerability didn't mean weakness. It meant I was ready to face my truth, regardless of the tempest. I can't keep living your dreams, I repeated, softer this time. I need to discover my own path, even if it means disappointing you. And maybe, just maybe, one day you'll understand. The seconds passed slowly, the gravity of my admission hanging thickly in the air, but I could feel the fight in my chest inching toward a fragile solace. For all of Dad's efforts, it had led me here, standing on the brink of freedom, a chance to define who I was truly meant to be. But then the moment fractured. You honestly think you can just turn your back on everything I've worked for? He shot back, voice rising dangerously. Anger flared like a wildfire, and I braced myself for the tailspin. Just as I thought the confrontation was about to drip into inevitable chaos, Eric stepped between us, his body a protective barrier. This isn't about you anymore, he said, voice steady and commanding. This is about her. You owe it to her and yourself to listen. The room fell back into a palpable silence, as Dad's fierce gaze softened slightly, the lines of hostility relaxing as he absorbed Eric's words. I could see that flicker of doubt in his eyes, an unfamiliar sensation, as if for one fragile moment, he was reconsidering the world he had constructed around my life. Yet, before I could take a step closer to that glimmer of hope, a sound came from the hallway, a soft thud followed by a muffled voice. I turned my head and gasped as the unmistakable figure of my brother emerged from the shadows, eyes wide with realization. I heard everything, he mumbled, a mix of confusion and vulnerability coloring his expression. And I need to talk to you too. The weight of my brother's sudden presence felt like another layer added to the already turbulent atmosphere. And while I had braced myself to confront my father, I hadn't anticipated having to face my brother, the very person I thought I'd held in an emotional prison through my silence. As I exchanged a glance with him, a swirl of uncertainty flooded my thoughts. The storm was far from over, and now I was confronted by the depth of my family's struggle, the unspoken rifts that lay dormant far too long. What other truths would emerge from this chaos? What other revelations awaited us, buried beneath years of misunderstandings and unmet expectations? Inextricably linked, my heart raced, filled with trepidation. The cliff of my emotions steepened, and just as I braced myself for another conversation that would inevitably force me to confront everything I had held inside, I wondered, would this be the moment it all unraveled, or the moment it began to stitch together something new? The silence in the room seemed to stretch infinitely, shrinking the space around us until it felt like we were all trapped in a bubble, suspended in time. My brother's presence, unexpected and jarring, sent a ripple of discomfort through the air. His wide eyes darted between me and our father, the tension thickening further as we all processed the implications of his arrival. "I need to talk to you too," he repeated, and I felt a wave of dread crash over me. Did he sense the cracks in our family's foundation? And if so, what did he want to say? My brother, the quiet observer, the one who pulled away whenever things became too chaotic, was the last person I expected to take a stand in the midst of this storm. "Can it wait?" Dad spat, his frustration boiling over. "This is not the time. No, it can't," my brother replied, surprising me with a fierceness I had never seen in him before. "It's never the time to talk about everything that's wrong with us, Dad. It's always swept under the rug and glossed over. But it's all there, isn't it?" The tide of his words pulled me into a wave of nostalgia. The countless times I'd wished had stood up, wished had fought back against our father's overpowering presence. But now, here he was, breaking the surface at last. I searched his face for signs of certainty, for the brother I had spent years trying to protect from this very turmoil. "What do you mean, everything that's wrong?" I asked, my voice trembling as I placed my hand on my brother's shoulder. Maybe together we could navigate this painful territory, but he shook his head. "It's all the things you said and more. I've felt it too, you know. All that pressure. All those expectations. But I never had the courage to say it out loud." "Then what are you saying now?" I urged, feeling a mix of fear and exhilaration. His vulnerability coaxed something within me, a flicker of hope that perhaps this was a chance for us to unravel our shared pain. "I am saying that I watched you fight to express who you are while I'd just hidden. I let it happen. I thought if I laid low, everything would be easier. But it's not. It's just easier for you to bear it all, and I'm tired of standing back." His eyes glistened with unshed tears, and I wanted to reach out to him, encase him in warmth and understanding. The hesitant air shifted as our father's expression transformed from anger to something unreadable. I saw the confusion cloud his eyes, but underneath lingered a hint of fear. The truth of our discourse cut deep, and I could almost see the wheels of realization turning in his mind, as if he recognized the fractures in the family he had built. "Stop it!" Dad's voice rose again, but this time it held less venom, coming out more like a plea for control than a demand. "You're both being ridiculous. I've given you everything." "Everything but understanding," I said, my voice breaking against my will. "Can't you see that? You see only the surface of things. You've lost sight of the true us, Dad." Suddenly, the air rippled with a flicker of emotion I couldn't quite grasp. The tension shifted imperceptibly, and I could see my brother trembling under the weight of his emotions, and I rushed to take his hand in mine, a silent vow of solidarity. "Real families talk, Dad. We need to talk." In that moment, deep in the chasm of our family's unraveling, a small flicker of hope ignited. But the fleeting sense of unity was abruptly shattered when the door swung open, revealing a figure I hadn't expected, a family friend, Ms. Garcia, her brow furrowed with concern. "I am sorry to interrupt, but I thought I heard voices. Are you all okay?" Her voice was soft, yet carried a strength that was undeniable. The jolt of her arrival broke whatever fragile spell we had been under. My heart raced as I locked eyes with my brother. His wide eyes mirrored my own uneasiness. What if our hidden fears, our pent-up frustration, spill over to someone who wasn't prepared to witness this tumult? "We're fine," I managed to say, the lie tasting bitter even as I uttered it. "Just having a conversation." But I could see Ms. Garcia didn't buy it. Her gaze flickered among us, absorbing the palpable energy that lingered like an electrified cloud. "You don't look fine," she said gently, stepping further into the room. "You look like you're all about to break down." "I'm here to listen. Please, let me help." I felt the tide shift once again. As if the jagged shards of our collective struggles were at the precipice of being laid bare for all to see. Would this be the moment we laid everything out in the open? Or would it push us further into the chaos we had created ourselves? In the midst of this turmoil, I suddenly found myself wrestling with a new emotion. The fear of sharing our pain, weighed against the desperation for healing. The desire for connection clashed against the instinct to shield ourselves, each conflicting sentiment pulling us deeper into the maw of our unresolved history. We were on the brink of reckoning, and as Ms. Garcia's presence loomed over us like a lighthouse, I felt the foundation beneath me shift. This was more than just a family confrontation. It was the beginning of something new, and yet terrifying. But the need to protect my family's secrets felt just as heavy as the urge to bring them into the light. As her eyes locked onto mine, I was struck by a sudden realization. Perhaps the true unraveling had yet to begin. What if everything we had shielded away was far more transformative than I could have ever imagined? And as the weight of my fears settled heavily in my chest, I also felt a shattering recognition. We were no longer just confronting a father and daughter struggle. We were on the brink of facing everything we had ever hidden, and that storm was just beginning to gather strength. The quiet that enveloped us in those next moments weighed heavy, suffocating. My heart thudded relentlessly against my ribcage, each pulse reminding me of the shared breath between my family and Ms. Garcia. The resolve on her face was palpable, a beacon of empathy amid the chaos swirling between us. I could feel both encouragement and dread from my brother's hand clasped in mine, anchoring me even as the turbulent thoughts threatened to pull us apart. Ms. Garcia, Dad began, his voice adopting a defensive edge. This isn't your business, isn't it? She countered gently, tilting her head slightly as if challenging the very foundation of his authority. You see, I've known you all for years. I've watched you grow, and I can't help but notice how much tension has settled in your home. Sometimes it takes an outsider to see what's so painfully obvious inside. Her words hung in the air like a challenge, and I could sense the shift within my broth, a mixture of betrayal and relief. His grip on my hand tightened, and I wished I could draw strength from him as I focused on our father's reaction. Would he lash out? Would he retreat further into his shell? What do you know? Dad shot back, the tremor in his voice betraying the facade of control he tried to maintain. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. This is a family matter. We don't need anyone poking around in our business. And yet you're breaking apart right in front of me, she said softly, her gaze unwavering. You think you're protecting them by keeping everything under the surface. But your children see everything, the unspoken words, the anger, the silence. They feel the weight of it all. What happens when they don't feel they can talk anymore? I watched as the color drained from my father's face, a mix of guilt and confusion swirling behind his eyes. This was the moment of reckoning. And yet the fear of uttering the truths we all harbored clung to my throat like an insurmountable weight. I longed to break the silence, to be brave enough to voice what had rooted itself deep within my spirit, the pain, the disappointments, the longing for acknowledgement. Dad, I began, my voice trembling louder than before, can't you see? We're not okay. We're scared to even speak to you, afraid of how it'll all turn out. Because every time we try, it ends in anger or frustration. Why can't you just be grateful? He hissed, but the edge in his voice faltered, revealing a flicker of vulnerability beneath his hard exterior. Gratitude doesn't change how we feel, my brother interjected. I'm grateful for everything you've given us, but I'm also tired of carrying your expectations like weights around our necks. I'm tired of being ashamed to be who I am. The silence that followed felt like the calm before a storm, filled with the potential for disaster or revelation. I couldn't breathe, watching as Dad's clenched fists relaxed barely a fraction. Hope and despair danced behind his guarded expression. I don't know how to fix any of this if you don't speak to me, Dad finally admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. The admission hung in the air, heavy with regret, and suddenly, in that echo of shared pain, I began to feel hopeful. Just maybe, we could forge a path through this darkness together. The room seemed to shrink again, the weight of every unspoken word pressing down. I shifted, leaning on my brother while feeling the warmth of Ms. Garcia's presence still radiating between us. It starts with honesty, I said, heart racing with each syllable. Let's not protect each other from the truth anymore. We need to talk about everything, the expectations, the pain, and even the anger. In that moment, a stirring of courage ignited within me. If we were all to be transformed, there had to be a willingness to face the uncomfortable. Mom used to tell me that silence is the greatest thief of joy. We can't let it steal our family any longer. Dad's gaze flickered toward the window, avoiding the confrontation, and the tightened muscles in his shoulders suggested that he was grappling with the storm brewing inside him. Storms can be cleansing sometimes, Ms. Garcia murmured, almost to herself. They clear the old debris so new things can grow. For a heartbeat, the possibilities filled the room, blooming within our apprehensive hearts. I caught my brother's encouraging eye, and with a slow inhale, I prepared to take the plunge we desperately needed. There's so much we haven't said, and am ready to begin, but before I could form the next words, the heavy thud of my father's fist on the table drew me up short, the noise slicing through the anticipation with a disorienting effect. No! He yelled, his face flushing with emotion. I can't do this right now. The sudden eruption sent my pulse racing, the warmth draining from the atmosphere as he turned, storming out of the room before I could react. The door slammed behind him, echoing through the silence and leaving us in a thudding vacuum of uncertainty. I felt my heart drop. We had come so close, yet he had fled. I turned to find my brother's expression mirroring the confusion and despair I felt. Will he come back? My brother whispered, fear etching his brow. I don't know, I whispered back, my voice trembling with the enormity of our father's retreat. Suddenly, Ms. Garcia stepped closer, a low but steadying presence. We can't change what he's running from, but you two have taken a brave step. Talk to each other. Begin the healing here. As her words seeped into the cracks of our situation, I felt an unexpected warmth spread. This was not over. I could see the outlines of a shared path forming before us, illuminated by the flicker of truth we had dared to confront. But even as a small surge of hope swirled within me, I couldn't shake the chilling realization. What if, when the storm passed, we found ourselves left in the wreckage of a home that was never meant to be rebuilt again? Would the foundation of our family truly hold if we pierced the veil of truth that had maintained our fragile peace for so long? I curled my fingers around my brother's as we both remained rooted in the moment, the heavy air swelling around us. We were standing at the precipice of an unimaginable transformation. And with our father's exit, I sensed a new dread beginning to unfurl, a looming question that threatened to shift everything we thought defined us. What lay ahead if our father didn't return to face the truth he had sought to escape? The silence lingered like a distant storm on the horizon, the weight of my father's abrupt exit creating a chasm I felt all too acutely. The light that had flickered when I began to voice my fears now dimmed, leaving an uncertain twilight that wrapped around my thoughts. Do you think he really will? My brother murmured, his voice entrenched in a mix of dread and disbelief. I wanted to believe our father would return, that the confrontation would pull him back into our shared space. But how long could we wait? You heard him. He doesn't know how to face this, I said lightly, though the tremor in my words betrayed my own uncertainties. The truth was, I didn't know if he would confront the demons that had haunted him for years. Ms. Garcia's presence felt grounding in the chaos of our emotions. It's okay to feel frightened, she said, her voice weaving a fragile thread of comfort through the air. Sometimes it takes a moment for the bravest part of us to emerge. Healing is not always a swift or straightforward path. We sat in a fragile triangle of unspoken hopes and fears. Around us, the faint rustle of trees outside reminded me of a world that continued in its rhythm, indifferent to our tempest. I thought of my brother, still clutching my hand, his spirit somehow providing solace amidst the gnawing uncertainty. Should we talk? I suggested, the words escaping from my lips hesitantly. Just the thought of it was daunting, but perhaps we did need to forge our own spaces of honesty, away from the specter of our father's fears. My brother nodded slowly, the flicker of determination igniting in his eyes. Yeah, maybe we should. There was a weight to his agreement, as though stepping into this raw territory might carve out a sliver of understanding amid our collective turmoil. Still holding my brother's hand, I took a deep breath, adrenaline coursing through me. I've been feeling suffocated by Mom's expectations, Dad's anger, the fear of saying the wrong thing. Sometimes, I look at what's happening around us, and I feel like I'm disappearing into the walls. Like I don't exist unless I'm what everyone else needs me to be. He inhaled sharply, the reflection of shared woes unspooling in the air between us. I get that, he said suddenly. There are days I feel like I have to wear a mask too. I push and shove and yell, but it's just noise. It's this pent-up frustration, trying to scream for someone to see me. His vulnerability hung between us like a tender thread, binding us tightly in our fears and hopes. I don't want to wear a mask anymore, I admitted, my voice breaking. I want to be free to feel what I'm feeling, even if it's ugly or it hurts. The tears began to sting my eyes as I let the weight of that admission sink in. His grip on my hand tightened, and I sensed a shift, an understanding coalescing in the space we occupied. Then let's be honest together, he said, his voice resonating with newfound strength. We don't need to pretend. I need you to be my sister and not just the daughter he wants me to be. For a moment, we both breathed in the spirit of this small act of courage. But amidst that flicker of hope, I felt a shiver crawling up my spine. What if when we peeled back the layers, we uncovered cracks that were too deep to bridge? I closed my eyes, trying to ward off the unsettling thoughts looming in my mind. Just then, the sound of the front door creaking open interrupted our moment. My heart leapt in my chest, hope sparking instantaneously. Had Dad finally come back? My brother and I exchanged an anxious glance, rising to our feet, our breaths suspended between anticipation and dread. As the familiar figure stepped hesitantly into the room, I felt a rush of conflicting emotions. It was Dad, but he didn't carry with him the resolve we had so desperately hoped for. Instead, his expression was clouded with a profound confusion, a shadow passing through his eyes as he took in the sight of us holding hands in the aftermath of our dialogue. I thought I left, he stammered, an unfamiliar vulnerability creeping into his voice. I thought I could just walk away, Dad, my brother exclaimed, unable to hide the mixture of surprise and concern swelling in his tone. I don't know how to do this. His hands trembled slightly, revealing how far the resolve he had clung to had unraveled. I don't know what to say to make any of this better. In that moment, my heart ached with a rush of compassion for the man who had always held us under the weight of his own burdens. There was still so much unsaid, so much of his own fears influencing our realities. But before I could gather my thoughts to bridge this fragile gap, an unexpected sound broke the heavy atmosphere, sharp and urgent. The phone on the table rang, slicing through our cocoon of vulnerability, as if the universe had intervened to demand our attention. My heart sank. Would this be another distraction, stealing away our chance to connect? I felt my brother's hand slip from mine as he turned to the source of the noise, but I held my breath. The air felt heavy with tension, every heartbeat counting down the potential for broken intimacy. And just as my father's hand trembled toward the phone, the last look in his eyes sent a frigid chill through me, a mixture of fear, uncertainty, and dread. In that moment, I could sense that while we were only just starting to face our truth, something far greater loomed just outside of reach. What if this call was about to shatter whatever fragile hope we had begun to weave? As the second ring echoed through our hearts, it became achingly clear. The journey toward healing had only just begun, but it was also fraught with challenges that could tip the scales of our fragile existence. The phone continued its relentless ringing, each tone a reminder of the uncertainty that loomed over us. My father hesitated, his hand trembling above the receiver, the immediate decision hanging in the air like a storm cloud about to burst. My brother's gaze flickered from our father to me, confusion and apprehension etched across his face. I could see the panic building within him, the very same feelings I struggled to contain swirling around us like a tempest. Dad, maybe it's important, I ventured, my voice wavering as I attempted to penetrate the suffocating silence. My words broke into the uncharted territory we had begun to navigate. Perhaps they could reroute the storm towards a semblance of calm. He seemed to focus briefly, nodding as if regaining a fragment of purpose amidst the chaos of emotions. Right, it could be. His voice cracked mid-sentence, and it struck me how fragile his resolve had become under the weight of his own sorrow. Just answer it, my brother urged, the urgency creeping into his tone, but the remaining distance threaded between us was still palpable. I could feel the stranglehold of unvoiced questions choking our once tight bond, leaving only echoes of what we had hoped to rebuild. At last, my father drew a deep breath and lifted the receiver to his ear, the small act of defiance amplifying his vulnerability. As he answered, I couldn't help but lean closer, longing to cling to any glimpse of clarity emerging from this chaos. His brow furrowed, mouth pressing into a tight line as he listened intently, the tension thickening as each word on the other end seemed to deepen the shadows, marring his expression. "Who?" he finally asked, his voice quaking slightly, as he glanced up at us, the confusion swirling like fog in his gaze. "What happened?" My heart raced with an instinctive dread, an ominous itch crawling beneath my skin, whispering that whatever news awaited him could very well shift the entire course of our fragile reunion. I caught a fleeting glimpse of my brother's face contorting with worry, our earlier connection fraying at the edges. After what felt like an eternity, my father hung up, his face drained of color as it contorted into a mask of anguish. The quiet that followed was deafening. I could almost hear my heart throbbing in my ears. It's about Mom," he stammered, eyes wide with alarm, the air between us growing heavier with unspoken fears. "She was just in a car accident." A crushing wave of emotions crashed into me. Denial surged through the fracture of my heart as I struggled to comprehend his words, each syllable holding a weight that threatened to shatter our very existence. My brother gasped, eyes darting back and forth between my father and me, fear pooling in his expression. "No," I whispered, the word barely escaping my lips as disbelief clawed at my chest. "No, it can't be. She can't be hurt." The warmth of family that had just begun to seep back into our dynamic felt like it was being pulled away, leaving behind a cold void filled with panic. A screaming silence erupted within me as I tried to process the magnitude of what had been unleashed. I asked she my brother began, but the question hung there, unasked and unanswered, heavy with the weight of uncertainty. My father pinched the bridge of his nose, fighting back tears that threatened to spill over as he struggled to find his voice. "I don't know yet. They're taking her to the hospital. I need to go." The words struck like lightning, sending stark shockwaves through all of us. The uncertainty enveloped me like a smothering blanket, fear gripping my throat as I fought to understand the gravity of the situation. "Can't we come with you?" I pleaded, my heart racing with the thought of losing another anchor in my life. But he shook his head, his eyes brimming with anguish as if he was forced to bear the weight of this moment alone. "No, I can't. I need to see her. Just stay here, please." The desperation in his voice was palpable, and while my instincts screamed to follow him, to stay together through this calamity, there was an undeniable chasm forming again. He was slipping away again, retreating into the shadows of his own turmoil, and I felt helpless to stop him. "Please, don't go," I cried, feeling the tears spill over like a dam breaking. "We need each other right now." The rawness of that plea seemed to reach him, if only for a moment. Our eyes locked, a shared understanding flashing between us, fragile yet impossible to ignore. It was then I noticed something else flicker in his expression, a lingering flicker of doubt that spoke to the silent fear of losing not just our mother, but our entire family. With a final, shaky breath, he whispered, "They'll be back. I promise." And just like that, he turned on his heel and dashed out into the encroaching darkness. I was left in a tumult of confusion and grief, my brother's eyes reflecting an echo of my own. We stood together, frozen in place, with the echo of the door slamming against the wall reverberating through our hearts. Where only minutes ago there had been hope for healing, now a new storm loomed over Yuson that seemed to cast an even darker shadow across the fragile path we were trying to walk together. "Will he come back?" my brother whispered, his voice quivering as he wrestled with the uncertainty that had consumed us once more. "I hope so," I replied, the words feeling inadequate in the face of everything that was unraveling. Before I could compose myself enough to say anything more, a quiet resolve ignited within me. If our father had once chosen to walk away, that could no longer be his path. And if our mother was facing her own reckoning, it meant we had to stand strong, even if we could feel the ground slipping. A single thought shot through me. If this was to be a journey through suffering and hardship, then perhaps we could create a beacon of hope out of our despair. So long as we faced it together. But as we reached for that flickering strand of belief, I couldn't shake the growing sense of dread lingering in my gut. What if this was just the beginning of a spiral that would forever alter our family's fabric? Swallowing hard, I turned towards my brother, my heart still racing from the chaos. What do we do now? The distance had closed again, but I could feel the tremors of uncertainty beneath the surface, waiting for something unnameable to shift once more. All I knew was that whatever clarity we sought might be trapped somewhere in the swirling tempest of our lives, and the whirlwind had only just begun. The clock on the wall ticked, each beat a reminder of the passage of time that felt both cruel and unyielding. My brother and I remained locked in a moment that felt suspended between dread and uncertainty. The shadows crept along the walls of our dimly lit living room, wrapping us in a cocoon heavy with fear and the lingering scent of desperation. "I never thought we'd be standing here again," my brother whispered, breaking the silence. His voice wavered, a fragile thread that hinted at the chaos simmering beneath the surface. "It feels just like before." The memory of our last family argument hung in the air like a cloud of smoke, obscuring the hope we had begun to foster. I could see it etched on his face, the weight of our past, the unhealed fractures that had nearly torn us apart. This new crisis threatened to pry those wounds open again, but it was a reminder of how we had once stood against the world together. "We have to stay strong, remember?" I said, attempting to inject reassurance into the trembling space between us. "Mom needs us to hold on. We can't let her see us like this." But even as I uttered the words, doubt clawed at me. My heart was not steady. I was just as fragile as my brother. We settled into silence, each drowning under the enormity of our shared fear. I glanced at the door too often, waiting for our father to return, but all that awaited us was the echo of his departing footsteps. My body tingled with anxiety, and the tick of the clock seemed to grow louder, a timer counting down the seconds until everything changed, yet again. My brother's abrupt shift drew my gaze. He leaned forward, his hands clasped in his lap, eyes flicking toward the window where raindrops raced each other down the glass. "Do you think if we just started talking about the good things? About the times we had before everything came crashing down?" Pride tugged on my lips at the earnestness radiating from him. Memories flooded through my mind, cherished moments of laughter and joy, unsung melodies that once cradled our family. "Yeah. We can remember her favorite stories, like the time she made that huge breakfast on my birthday? The pancakes that would never fit on my plate, and the syrup disaster?" He chuckled, and in that moment, a tentative smile broke through the despair that clung to us both. "Yes. And you ended up with syrup on your shirt," I added, my heart warming as the memory washed over us like sunlight breaking through the clouds. As the haze of fear lifted just a little, I realized kindness and shared memory might be our greatest armor against the storm. "Why don't we write down some of our best memories? When Mom gets better, we can read them together. It'll remind her how loved she is," I suggested. My brother nodded, and I could see determination once more shining in his eyes. "I want her to know we're here, no matter what. And that we still believe in all the little things." For the first time since the call, I felt a flicker of hope. Reaching for a notepad, I set it down between us along with a pen, feeling the weight of our purpose. "Okay, then let's start." As we began to jot down memories, the room filled with soft laughter. The act itself felt like weaving a fragile thread of resilience back into the tapestry of our lives. I captured the moments when Mom taught us to ride bikes, my brother's first disastrous attempt at baking that ended in tears but also laughter, and her endless bedtime stories that transported us to far-off worlds. Yet, amidst this tiny reprieve, a sliver of concern coiled in my chest. What if she didn't pull through? What if these moments were all that remained? Each memory seemed to bring with it a weight of sadness. In our lean toward hope, I could feel a shadow lurking on the outskirts of fear that coiled itself around our hearts like a vice. Then, as we scribbled down the last few memories, a sound pierced the stillness, a slow, deliberate knock at the door. My heart lurched at the sudden interruption, colliding with anxiety. Who could it be? My brother's expression mirrored my own as we exchanged a glance, the underlying fear of more bad news evident in our wide eyes. I stood slowly, apprehension coursing through me, each step towards the door amplifying the dread echoing in my mind. When I finally swung it open, a woman stood before me, soaked to the bone, her hair a matted mess clinging to her pale face. It took a heartbeat longer than usual to register who she was. A striking resemblance to my mother, unmistakable. It was her sister, my aunt, with tears brimming in her eyes. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice a tremor laced with urgency. A wave of confusion crashed over me as I nodded instinctively, stepping aside to let her in. My brother moved closer, the initial spark of hope flickering once more in a different way. But as she walked into our home, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming, something beyond our current crisis that could shift our entire landscape once again. "What is it?" I asked breathlessly, my heart racing sharply in anticipation. Her gaze was distant, lost in a thought that seemed to devastate her all over again. "It's about your mother." The ground felt unstable beneath me, my blood turning to ice as dread filled the room. 1,000 possibilities flashed through my mind, each darker than the last. I glanced at my brother. His mouth had gone dry, the air hanging heavily as our hearts collectively thudded in our chests. "Just tell us," my brother urged, the facade of our fragile hope crumbling, as we braced ourselves for whatever new storm awaited us. And in that moment, as my aunt opened her mouth to speak, I realized with dawning horror that the fabric of our family was about to change irrevocably, yet again. The tension thickened in the air as my aunt took a shuddering breath, her eyes glistening with unspilled tears. "Your mother's not just sick, there's more," she began, her voice wavering as if the weight of her words might shatter the fragile hope we had built. My breath itched, fear pooling in my stomach like ice water. "What do you mean?" I whispered, my voice barely a thread. She has a condition that needs to be treated immediately. But the doctors found something unexpected, something serious," my aunt explained, her hands trembling as she fidgeted with her own wedding ring. Every spoken word felt like a dagger piercing through the already tender fabric of my heart. I could see my brother's hands clench into fists, his excitement for the past moments faded, drawn back into the painful present. "What kind of condition?" he pressed, urgency brinking desperation. Her eyes squeezed shut for a brief moment, as though bracing herself for the inevitable hurricane of emotions that would follow. "It's advanced cancer. They need to start treatments right away. But she's refusing them," she revealed, her voice quaking under the weight of the revelation. A wave of dizziness washed over me as I processed her words, battling the instinct to turn away from this new reality that loomed before us. My heartbeat thumped wildly in my chest, a symphony of panic mixing with disbelief. "No, that's not possible. She can't resist. Not now." I managed to choke out, the wild rush of thoughts colliding in my head. I tried to talk to her, my aunt continued, anguish stripping her words of their structure. "But she's terrified. She thinks she'll lose her mind, that the treatment will steal her essence." Her expression turned pleading as she met my eyes. "You have to help her. She trusts you too more than anyone." The fracture of emotion spread within me, a mix of anger and helplessness surging to the surface. Our mother's fear boiled down to her unwillingness to fight, leaving us in a battle we hadn't prepared for. "Why would she think that?" I whispered, more to myself than to anyone else. "Because she's afraid of becoming something she doesn't recognize anymore," my aunt replied, her voice now dense with sorrow. "She's afraid of you seeing her in pain. That you'll remember her as a shadow of herself." The walls felt like they were closing in, squeezing the air from my lungs. My mind raced back to the laughter we had just shared. Had it been too fragile, too fleeting? Our sanctuary of memory suddenly felt tainted, touched by the harsh reality of our present. My brother stepped forward, breaking the crushing silence. "But we're here for her. She doesn't have to go through this alone," he pleaded, his voice desperate and raw. "Yes. We can remind her of how strong she is," I added, desperation infusing my words with urgency. "We'll fight for her. If she needs to see us standing together, then that's what we'll do. She'll need to feel that love again. She can't give up." My aunt looked at us with a mixture of hope and heartbreak, then wiped her cheeks with trembling hands. "She will need more than just love," she said softly, "but this is a start. You too must be her anchor. But be gentle with her. There will be days she won't want to talk, days she'll push you away. You need to be prepared for that." With a shared nod, we both inhaled and tried to steady the storm brewing inside us. "We can do this," my brother murmured, his determination igniting a flicker of strength within me. We have to. If Mom can do it, we can too. Just as I felt the tendrils of resolve wrapping around me, a thought surfaced through the chaos. What if she needed more than words? What if with every moment that passed, every ounce of bravery summoned was still not enough? The darkness, like a vulture, swooped again, whispering treacherous doubts that gnawed at the edges of my newfound resolve. And with that, the reality of my brother's earlier suggestion about writing those memories surged back to me, crisp and vivid. Would choices rooted in hope soften the edges of what we were facing? Could our recollections be the light that pierced the darkness? As if sensing my turmoil, my aunt turned her gaze to the notepad resting between us, a perfect reminder of what we had fought for only moments ago. "What's that?" she asked, gesturing towards it. "Memories we're collecting for Mom." "To remind her who she is," I replied, the words spilling from me like a promise. A faint smile blossomed on her face, the first hint of warmth we had felt since her arrival. "Perhaps that's exactly what she needs, to be reminded of her strength through the love you both carry for her," my aunt suggested, her voice gaining strength as she spoke. "Then let's show her," my brother said, steeling himself. As I returned to the pen, ready to scribble down another cherished moment, a sudden realization hit me. If there were memories we hadn't even unearthed yet? What if the act of remembering was going to lead us to unveil truths that had long lain silent? And just as I jotted down another memory, the phone rang, interrupting that fragile moment of active hope. A dreadful intuition rippled through me as I glanced at my brother, whose expression hardened. "Should I get it?" he asked, voice taut. "Answer it," I urged, flipping the pen nervously between my fingers. He picked up the receiver, a frown already forming on his brow. "Hello?" "Yes." This as his words trailed off, and silence enveloped the room once more, heavy and ominous. The look on his face shifted from curiosity to horror, a visceral jolt of fear coursing through the air like electric shockwaves. I could only stand frozen, my heart racing, the weight of dread threatening to crush me. Whatever words were exchanged on the other end sent ripples of despair through the fragile thread of hope we had just woven. As he hung up, my brother seemed to pale, lost for a moment somewhere far away from me. "What is it?" I asked, my stomach twisting painfully. "Mom, she might not be coming home." The words sliced through me, raw and brutal, leaving me breathless. In that instant, all our sincere efforts, the laughter, our attempts to remember, felt like echoes being swallowed by an encroaching darkness. The clock on the wall ticked unremittingly, an unsettling reminder that time was running out, leaving us no choice but to confront the depths of our deepest fears. I sat there, unable to process my brother's words. The room spun, the air thickening until it felt like I couldn't breathe. "What do you mean she might not be coming home?" I murmured, my voice barely a whisper, as if speaking too loud might shatter whatever hope was left. He looked at me, his face stricken. "They're moving her to a facility. Something about needing specialized treatment. They don't think she can handle it here." The finality of his tone struck me like a fist, and I felt the blood drain from my face. My heart raced, pounding against my ribcage, a frantic rhythm echoing my mounting panic. "Is she okay? Is she going to?" My voice trailed off, the unsaid words too heavy to carry. "I don't know," he said, shaking his head. "They couldn't give any specifics." My mind spiraled, collapsing in on itself as I grappled with the reality of the situation. What were we supposed to do now? We had barely begun to process the reality that our mother was ill, and now, the possibility that she might not return was a gaping wound in the fabric of our family. A silence descended upon us, suffocating, as each of us tried to make sense of this new crisis unfurling before us. I can't have her gone," I finally stammered. The tears that had held off began to stream down, silent cascades that fell on my brother's worried expression. What if the memories we're trying to collect aren't enough? What if she doesn't remember us? What if— "Stop," he interrupted fiercely, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "You're letting fear take over. We can't think like that. She needs us to be strong. We can help her find her strength throughout this." His words rang with an urgency that both scared and inspired me. I nodded, feeling that familiar flicker of hope once more rising within me like the dawn breaking through a cold night. My brother was right. We couldn't let our despair consume us entirely. We had to do more. "What do we do?" I asked, desperation lacing my voice. "We fight for her," he said. "Just like we said? Let's find a way to show her she's loved as well as remind her of all of those moments, the strength she has inside her. Let's bring those memories to life." I took a deep breath, letting his determination fill me, igniting a fire inside me that I had thought dwindled. "Together," I affirmed, the notion propelling us forward as one. Our aunt's words echoed in my mind, showing her love wouldn't be enough, we had to stand united in this storm. "We can visit her at the facility," I exclaimed, excitement mixing with my trepidation. "We can take all the memories with us, give her something to hold on to." "Yes," my brother said, his resolve matching my own. "And we write her letters. We can leave them for her. Remind her who she is, so she doesn't lose herself in the darkness." The thought hit me like a bolt of lightning. It was perfect. The clock continued its relentless ticking, but now it felt like it was counting down the moments I could use to pour my love and words into something tangible. "Let's write it all down, share everything we remember," I said, scrambling for the notepad now charged with purpose. "We can talk about the times she made us laugh, the stories she told, even the silly little things that made her who she is." With renewed determination, we got to work. Time blurred into a flurry of words and shared memories, pouring our love onto the pages. We scribbled down every detail, from her gentle smile when she called us to dinner to the way she held our hands when we were scared. Each recollection felt like a piece of armor against an unseen enemy, a way of fighting for her even in her absence. As we wrote, laughter punctuated our recounting, releasing some of the heaviness weighing on our hearts. We reminisced about the magic of family movie nights, where popcorn flew everywhere, her insistence on reading books before bed, even the clumsy way she tried to dance with us, her laughter brightening the room. Each recollection felt like a memory blooming into existence, a small counterattack against the storm of uncertainty that surrounded us. After hours of pouring our hearts into those pages, we paused. Our notepad was filled with words, love letters crafted not just with memories but with the hope that they'd reach her, reminding her of the indelible spirit she bore. And in that moment, a phone rang again, vibrating with urgency. My brother shot me a look, eyes wide. "What if it's about Mom?" We both hurried to answer, unable to ignore the possibility. The moment I lifted the receiver, my heart raced in anticipation. "Hello?" A voice came through, shaky yet familiar. "It's me. It's Mom." Pure elation flooded my veins, and I felt my heart swell to the point of bursting. "Mom!" I exclaimed, wrapping my brother's arm in a tight grip, barely able to control my joy. "I need you both. Can you come?" A faint tremor quivered in her voice, and I felt all the air rush from my lungs. No matter how hard she fought to sound composed, I could sense her fear embedded beneath every syllable. "Yes. We'll be there in a heartbeat," my brother responded, his voice urgent. "We're coming right now." As we rushed to gather ourselves, our hearts racing with hope, fear, and affection, I realized that amidst the chaos, the love and fight we bore for one another were our greatest weapon. Whatever happened next, we were armed with memories and a promise to stand united. The drive felt surreal, the world outside blurring as we sped toward the facility. I grasped a piece of paper with our memories, secure and tucked inside my pocket, and with each mile, I envisioned the moment we'd reach her, reconnecting our love to the very heart of our family. As we reached the facility, a palpable tension filled the air. This was the battlefield where we would confront her fears, a chance to remind her of the strength that pulsated through our blood even in her darkest moments. When we entered her room, I was struck mute, gazing at the woman who had fought through so much and yet appeared so small in that sterile bed. There was an unspoken heaviness, but just as I could sense despair around her, I felt the threads of hope weaving once more between us. "Mom," I whispered, crossing the threshold. Her eyes met mine, and time seemed to suspend in that moment. "We're here." Our eyes locked, and for a split second, the world faded, leaving only the promise of what family embodies. an unshakable bond rooted, fierce, and enduring. "I've missed you," she said, her voice cracking under the weight of both love and loss. The culmination of our memories held tight in my pocket was now my lifeline. "We're not going anywhere," I promised. "We brought something for you." I reached inside, pulling out the notepad, the pages filled with our shared struggles and victories, each word a token of love crafted in the face of uncertainty. As I began to read, my voice steadying with each syllable, I watched her expression shift, faltering that barrier of fear for something else, something like acceptance, and someone closer to gratitude. Each word felt like a bright thread weaving through the tapestry of our connection, pulling us out of the darkness and back into the light. With every memory I shared, my mother's demeanor shifted from despair to lightness, her eyes glistening as she fought to hold back tears. In that moment, as laughter and memories fused into a melody of hope, I realized how vital it was to stand together as we traversed this hard path. For the first time in ages, I felt the warmth of love envelop us in invincible strength, ignited in the face of our fears and struggles, lighting the way forward. No matter the challenges ahead, we would always fight together. With a gentle squeeze of her hand, I understood the truth. We were all fighting our battles in different ways, but together we would learn to shine through the storms. Deep within, I felt the stirring of healing, the threads we had knit together guiding us toward the light, wrapping us in resilience and love. Outside, the clouds began to part, rays of sunlight streaming into the room. In that warmth, I whispered, "We're not going to give up on you, Mom. Never. We're family, and together we can find the light." And as she smiled, a flicker of understanding and recognition lighting up her face, I knew we had taken the crucial first step on a path toward healing our family, forever intertwined, unfolding into a new beginning. No matter how deep the shadows, we would always find our way back to the light as long as we held on to each other.